Hi, my name is Rabbi Dunner. Welcome to my weekly Erev Shabbos Torah, this week for Parshat Terumah. Terumah is the headquarters in the Torah for all the details of the Mishkan. V'asuli mikdash v'shachanti b'soicham, Hashem says, make me a sanctuary and I will dwell among you. The first item that the Torah talks about is the Aron HaBrit, the Ark of the Covenant. And do you know what? On the cover of this precious box, there were two cherubs, childlike statuettes with wings facing each other. The Aron not only symbolizes the Torah, it actually housed the Torah itself. Inside the Aron were the first broken luchos and the second set of luchos, and a copy of the final version of the Torah, Moshe's Torah. The poles on the side, the badim, symbolized the supporters of Torah. Just as the poles were never ever separated from the Aron, so too the supporters of Torah can never ever be separated from Torah. But what was the purpose of the Kruvim? The Chasam Sofer wrote in his commentary that he heard from his great Rebbe in Frankfurt, Rav Nosson Adler, the Holy Nesher, that the Kruvim represent Torah scholars, those who study Torah. What a beautiful idea. Don't you love it? But I have a question for you. Why would those who study Torah be represented by childlike figures? Good question, right? If I asked you to come up with a representation of those who study Torah, what would you think of? For sure, you'd not come up with kids. You'd design two statues of elderly rabbis with long, flowing beards. That's what springs to mind. So what's with the Kruvim? They're being little kids. What's going on? It doesn't make any sense. Rav Shmuel Rozovsky, the Rosh Yeshiva Ponevezh, whose shiurim inspired thousands, has a beautiful answer. A Torah scholar must always have a childlike enthusiasm when it comes to learning Torah. Typically, it's only children who possess such exuberance. Older people become jaded, tired, bored, burnt out. But kids, everything is so exciting for them. If only we could be kids again. But the truth is, we can. In my article that I wrote for Terumah this week, I mentioned a video of Rav Shmuel Birnbaum talking to Rabbi Bakht in learning. Two rabbis in their 80s arguing with such passion and excitement about some obscure point in the Gemara, surrounded by their students, their Talmidim, and their enthusiasm is infectious, it's childlike, it's so fresh, it's wonderful. The way to become a Talmid Chacham is to make sure that our learning always remains young, like the Kruvim on top of the Aron HaBrit. You must always try to hold on to that childlike enthusiasm, so the Torah is special. The definition for a scholar in Hebrew is not Chacham, it's Talmid Chacham. Do you know why? Because even the greatest sage remains a student, young, like the first day they learned Aleph Beis. There's another component to the Kruvim, besides for their childlike faces. They were also facing one another, Pneim Ish El Achiv. Rav Nosson Adler explains that although they were facing one another, they were not actually looking at one another. Each of the Kruvim was looking downwards towards the Aron itself, but the symbolism of them facing one another without looking at each other makes a lot of sense. Torah scholars may sometimes disagree, and even disagree vehemently, like Rav Birnbaum and Rav Bakht, because they want to understand what the Torah says, and they may understand it differently. Their focus is not with each other, it is with the Luchos HaEdus, the tablets of the testimony. Their focus is on the truth of the Torah. But even though they are focused towards the Luchos HaEdus, they are still facing each other. They still love each other. They never turn their backs on one another, and they certainly don't march away from one another in opposite directions. I want to bless you and all of us that we should always remain children when it comes to Torah, and we should stay facing each other even when we disagree. The main thing is that our energy, our base, our essence is the Aron HaBrit and the Luchos HaEdus. Wishing you Shabbat Shalom. Thank you so much for watching. Good Shabbos, good Shabbos.